Welcome back to This Is Property. You're with Rachelle Kroon, and today we have a very special guest called Ryan. He is a guest and a listener of the podcast. He's going to share his property journey with us, which I thought was really exciting for us to all hear because it hasn't all been roses along the way. Ryan's had some great learnings, and I'm really excited to share his story with you. So let's jump into the show. Firstly, thank you for joining us today, Ryan.
No worries.
Now, look, I'm going to start at the beginning. You reached out on Instagram and said you're happy to share your story, obviously anonymously. But what I thought was so exciting about your journey is that the start of your property journey hasn't been all roses. And what I really wanted to ask you first off was tell us about your first property purchase and I guess how you started your property journey.
Yeah, well, my first place that I bought was, I guess, you get a partner, we're living at home, she was living at home, next step, let's get a house together, that sort of story. And we did it at the time, we were really lucky because it was sort of at a time when 100% lend was still available. So essentially the amount of money that we had to put down wasn't a lot. And we had to look at a few different places and we ended up buying towards the top of our budget.
Yeah.
In a place on the Gold Coast, Upper Coomera.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of homework. I thought I was buying a great thing because there was plans about, shopping centre, uni, all the industrial area, a little bit Yatla. So I thought, yep, this is a great place to sort of set down roots, good schools, everything that sort of ticked the boxes. So it was a, in my eyes, a great decision. So I bought this place. I bought it in 2009. So it was sort of in a period when I guess the market was pretty hot. There was a lot of buyers. It was just after GFC.
Yeah, just after GFC. So yeah, tell us about the market at that time.
We were looking at a lot of places and they were moving pretty quickly. I'm not going to say I feel like at the moment the current hot that we're feeling in the market is sort of reminiscent of that. But there was plenty of properties where there was multiple bidders and I didn't go any auctions. It's Brisbane. It's not really, it's Gold Coast. It's not really this sort of auction market where things are transparent, but you have sales agents, sort of pushing more onto those offers. So the property itself was on the market for 360, and we actually offered $5 more because when we looked at it, did the maths, the repayment changes, wasn't a lot of money. It didn't really make a big deal, and it was at the top end of our budget, but it was within our lending capacity. So we made an offer of 365. It's got accepted, and before we know it, we'd settled and started the process of going to Amart and buying a furniture package and doing what you do to fill a brand new house, because we had a little bit of stuff. I was living at home, she was living at home, so we didn't have the bulk of the furniture. So we sort of did what you do and did that through some finance options that 60 months interest free and all of those things you offer when you walk in the door. We bought a furniture package and off we go. We're homeowners.
Now, 2009, you say the market was pretty similar to how it was now. You said that there was quite high percentage of lending. How much deposit did you actually save and how did you go about doing that?
Not a lot. To be honest, it would be in the singles of thousands. So, a few thousand is what we had to essentially pay for solicitor, conveyancer, and then the deposit that we had to hand over to the agent, which was only $1,000. It wasn't a lot of money. And because at the time, GFC, there was a lot of deals like you've got now where you've got the small deposits. Back then, there was the first home buyers grant. So that covered a lot of the stamp duty too. So where we would have had easily less than $10,000 between us. And that was our ticket into the market.
Yeah. So you got into the market and tell me how it felt after you got in.
It was great. I owned a home.
Yeah.
And then as you do, it's kind of a competition, you and the neighbours who's got the greenest lawn. And it was a street, my next door neighbour, he owned as well, great guy. It was one of those things that was good because I moved into a good area. The neighbours across the road were great neighbours at either side. I don't know if anyone knows the Upper Coomera area, but it was also called Upper Auckland. Heaps of them were Kiwis, lots of Kiwis in that area. And my partner at the time, she was Kiwi too. So it was, over at each other's neighbours' yards. It was a good little environment to sort of buy in. And the first few years was great because interest rates were low and, everything was within our reach to pay for.
Yeah. So what happened when I guess you had some rate rises? Tell me how that happened and how it felt.
Well, there was quite a few, so I can't remember what it exactly was, but there was a few in a row that went up just because that's what had to happen, monetary policy and all of those things, and it became hard. So it essentially was like living on essentially the minimum that we could get by. It was actually quite tough that people always go, oh, interest rates, this, people are going to lose their houses. People find a way to keep their house. And I actually got a second job. I got a job at the BP working in the service station. So I had my full-time job and then I got another job to work additional nights and bits and pieces. I actually went in, had the interview, did the induction process, and then one of the neighbors had a cousin or whatever it is that said, hey, I've got a mate that can rent a room from you. And luckily I did that instead. So we lived in a pretty big house. So it was a 4-bedroom, separate living, dining and double car garage. It was in a really nice place. And we rented the furthest room away from us. And because it was a 2-bathroom, he had his own bathroom, he had his own room then the end of the hallway. And the layout of the house, we had our ensuite and bedroom at the front of the house. So we were still pretty separate, but yeah, we just went the route of having more of my time and then renting out the back room.
Yeah, so we're talking about 2011. I know that rates started to go up. What happened eventually with that property?
I guess when you're fresh with a couple and you move out and it's your first love and, they don't always eventuate,
Yeah.
we split up. And I moved back to Brisbane, moved in with a mate. She moved back with her mum. And we had this property. It was negatively geared too. So there was a lot of new home builder grants and all of this. So there's plenty of properties coming onto the market. And we looked to sell it. We wanted to break up, sell the house. But we bought it for 365 and we had values come back at 340 and we just couldn't afford. We went in at 100% lend. We couldn't afford it to sell it because when... add to that, one of the exercises that we did during living in it when rates went up is we switched the loan to interest only. So that sort of made the budget a bit easier living in there, interest only, and occupied. The mortgage amount barely moved in the time that we were living in it. So yeah, we couldn't sell it. We were stuck with it. We had to rent it out. So we had a joint account. We topped money into each week. And we rented it out for a few years to then eventually sell it still at a loss. But yeah, that's sort of what happened towards the end of that property. We had to make do.
And I think that's something, I mean, especially with financial pressures, a lot of people do break up. And I think that, with the property market, the way it's gone in the last 8 years, there are a lot of people that haven't had to think about what would happen if they didn't have sufficient equity in their property at the time. So I was really interested to hear about your story because of this as well.
And that's the thing. People don't think about it. Like I bought the place, I got a lovely mum and she's like, parents go, buy property, you can't go wrong. Buy property, you can't go wrong. Buy property, I went wrong. And like when I was living there, I realized I'm paying more in interest than I am in rent. Like if I was renting, I wouldn't have this big mortgage every single day. I wouldn't have to worry about, things that pop up and I've got to fix. When I lived there, I really was sold on the thought that renting is better. Renting is way better. It's cheaper. I don't have to worry about rates. I don't have to worry about all these other external costs. Renting is better. And I was in the mindset, I'm happy with renting. So
Yeah.
it was an exercise that was like left a pretty sour taste in my mouth.
So you sold the property at a loss. Did you have to borrow to gap so you were able to sell? Because the bank won't let you sell unless you can cover the whole mortgage that's owing.
Correct. So in this time, I actually had moved to Melbourne. Met a new lady, love her to bits, got married, moved to Melbourne. I dragged her down here for work. I got a job opportunity I couldn't pass up, and I dragged her down to Melbourne and left the great Brisbane Gold Coast weather. I regret it every day living here in Melbourne. But yeah, we moved, and it was sort of at a point in our life where we wanted to just cut all ties. It was, when you still got this other person in the picture over an investment property, she basically said, just sell it. We'll get a bank loan and we'll pay the shortfall. So I ended up having it a loan for 14 grand, just Commonwealth Bank. This is what's happened. They're like, yep. I had obviously the income and everything to support the personal loan, but we sold it for 364. I really wanted to get 365, but I feel like the person that was buying from me really wanted to buy it cheaper than what I bought it, just for a win on their side.
Yeah.
And so I sold it for 364, but the thing is you still have to pay all the costs. all the selling costs, all the other bits and pieces. So I had to get a loan for 14 grand to actually sell sell my property at a $1,000 loss.
So tell me what year was that, Ryan?
I sold that in 2014.
So 2014, you've had 5 years in the property market. You've finished that journey of your first house with $14,000 in debt. I guess, when did you get the courage, and how did you make the decision to re-enter the property market, and when did you do it?
To be honest, I was quite happy renting, living cost effectively, and the job I moved to Melbourne paid well, and my wife had income, 2 incomes, no kids. I'll be honest, we were living the life, and then I resigned from that job that was paying well for I want to move back home. How are we going to do that? And logistically, moving into a rental interstate is very tricky. And financially, we're in a position, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had enough that was form a deposit for something, in the middle of the road, nothing extravagant. I still wanted to buy somewhere near my parents. It was quite fun, actually, because we lined up a whole bunch of inspections over a span of a couple of days. We flew up, we went out to one, we split up. She went with her mum to a couple, I went to a couple of others. We regrouped and said, let's put it in a list of which one's better. We put an offer in on one. It didn't get it, so we went to the next one on the list, put an offer in on that one, and we got that. So that one was where I feel like I won back. So the property previously sold in 2008 for $345,000, and I bought it in 2018 for $340,000. So I bought it for $5,000 cheaper than he bought it for. So
you got the win too. Now,
I got the win this time.
Tell me something. So you're at this time. So it's 2010. No, sorry, it's 2018.
18.
You're renting in Melbourne.
Yep.
You're looking to buy again in Queensland, but you're not a first home buyer this time. Have you saved a deposit to get back into the market?
I'd saved a deposit, so we still did a 90% lend. We didn't go to 20%. I'll fast forward all the story. All of my purchases have been 90%. I've been well and truly happy to pay LMI to get my ticket into the market. And that was not a lot. I feel like maybe 34 grand, 10%. We probably had 40 grand. So we had enough money, but not by sort of an exuberant amount. It's not like I hear of people having 100 grand in their bank accounts, but it was a lot of money for us back then. 2018 feels like money has doubled in price since then. So
you had a loss on property before. What gave you the courage to put all that money down again? Tell me where your mind was at the time that you've decided to get back into the market a few years later.
A lot of it was just based on maths. So like the rental income, we bought a townhouse, so there was strata in that as well. But the rent basically, it looked after itself. It wasn't going to be like my previous one where I had to chip in, $100 and something bucks every week. It pretty much would be looking after itself. And then it also provided me the future security that when I went to move home, I had somewhere to move to.
Yeah. What area did you buy in? Oxley. And that was in 2018. And tell me, how did that property go for you?
It did absolutely nothing for about 2 years. So 2020, obviously, we all know what happened. By then, it was probably worth, I think, about 360. It hadn't gone up a lot, but I wasn't really worried because, it wasn't costing me anything to hold. So if it went up a little bit, happy days. But at the end of the day, I got a good tax return each year. So I got a depreciation schedule, so I could claim back some money at tax time. And it was for me an easy process. Like I bought it, it looked after itself. I had a property manager that looked after it. There wasn't a lot of work. And then in the background, it was just sitting there looking after itself.
So the lack of capital growth in the few years wasn't a big negative for you because it wasn't costing you a whole lot to hold it over that time.
Correct. Yeah. Probably maybe if anything, made me a little bit of money once I factored in the tax return.
Yeah, and I think, it's really interesting when you see that first tax return. If you are having a property that's negatively geared, it does make a little bit of a difference, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, especially once you get a few more under your belt.
Now, a few more under your belt. Tell me when you decided to go again, because if it hasn't gone up in value, how did you make the decision to know that you were ready to go again?
I'm a very curious person. So when I sort of looked at it, looking after itself, I'm like, I want to understand the mechanics of it. And at the time, I was a sales trainer for a retail chain, and I did a lot of driving. I essentially was based out of the suburb in the east, and I traveled to the north, to out to the deep south, Pakenham, and then I had all this time in the car. So music gets a bit repetitive. I pumped podcasts. And back then I feel like there wasn't anyone really around. And I listened to the Property Couch and basically learnt a lot about, I guess you could say, the mechanics behind it all. What is desirable, what isn't desirable, and then also how to structure your finances, and then, defense strategies and all these bits and pieces that they go through. They've got this ABCD, I don't know what all the letters mean, but, they put all these frameworks in place, and it worked well in my brain because I sort of run a similar system where, you've got a set of rules and everything works together, and then you sort of get, understanding of it all. So, what made me think about jumping into buying again was essentially everything that was happening with COVID. When others are greedy, be fearful. When people are fearful, be greedy. And I was like, I've got to buy something. I didn't have a lot of money, so I had to buy something within my budget. And I sort of looked at Brisbane as a place that I knew it back to front. I sort of played rugby league, and I visited all the different suburbs and had friends everywhere. And I grew up on the edge of Ipswich, a suburb called Carroll Park. It's now called Ellen Grove. It used to be Ipswich, and then it got swapped to being Brisbane. But I saw the Ipswich area as somewhere that, if I overlay what works, something close to a train station, something close to a hospital, close to a uni, business infrastructure. I looked at Ipswich and thought, this is going to happen. Like, people ripped on Ringwood when I first moved to Melbourne and said, Ringwood's ghetto and all the rest of it. Now, Ringwood's a really, really nice place. Gentrification's insane. So I looked at it, and I basically locked down a few suburbs like Prassel, North Ipswich, and Leichhardt, and they ended up buying in 2020 in Leichhardt.
In Leichhardt, tell me, how much did you buy for?
You're going to fall over, but I bought it for 205 grand.
And what did you actually buy? What was the property type?
I bought a 3-bedroom house, 1 bathroom. It's an old army home, so it's nothing special. And to be honest, when I bought it, it was definitely ugly. It's not a pretty house, old faded sort of Tiffany blue green sort of paint with pink roof. It didn't look nice, but it had a tenant in place, and I can't remember what they were paying. They're paying about $300 a week.
Yeah, wow.
Buying it for 205. The maths made sense, and then I only needed about 30 grand as the deposit. And the craziest part of this story is that I never saw it. I know John is going to turn in his grave, because I know he's like, you need to see and feel and kick the tires.
Oh, you never saw the property?
Never saw it. I never saw it. It was the middle of lockdown. People are freaking out. This is another one. The person before me bought it in 2017 for 225.
Yeah.
Sold it for 3 years later, 20 grand less.
Oh no. And so you didn't see the property, you bought a house. Did you have a property manager go and see it for you? Who actually saw the property for you?
The building inspector. So basically put the contract subject to building and pest, got a building inspection done. I gave him a call and said, mate, what's it really like? And he told me, the tenant in there is nice. She looks like she's trying. It's old. There's nothing actually really wrong with it. Like, the property, there was a hole in like the back of the house that I put in the contract. This will need to be repaired. The owners repaired it. But outside, he said, it's just an old good house. It's an old military home. There's nothing, that's in there that's, you need to attend to. There's nothing, there's old wear and tear, but there's nothing in there that's, a red flag. It's just an old home.
And did you have enough equity in Oxley to be able to buy that, or did you have to save the deposit?
I refinanced, yeah. And this was the first time I refinanced Oxley. I actually refinanced it for 27 years. So I wanted to keep the loan, because the goal was to pay everything off. Yeah. So I refinanced that and I paid that principal and interest. I refinanced it again, principal and interest, just 27 years. And then I got this new one. And money out of my pocket, to be honest, I don't think there was a lot, because when it was 360, I don't think I got that much out of that property, because I went in at a 90% lend, and, it hadn't really changed and all of that. But I do remember that I refinanced it. Some of the reason is we were with a bank called Resimac.
Yeah, I know Resimac.
And the rate wasn't that good. But if we refinanced it, brought it to a new bank, our rate would be better. And it just seemed like I've got a really good mortgage broker, and he said, we'll do it together, and, it just is a better application.
Yeah.
And that was my first loan with Macquarie, I'm pretty sure too. So Macquarie, really good, fast turnarounds. Dealing with Resimac in the older one, it was a bit slow. Whereas, I felt like Macquarie, the process was so easy.
Yeah, so that was in 2020. So you've got two properties. You're probably at about a 90% across the board. Fast forward to what happened next.
What happened next was absolutely insane. We all know COVID prices, Brisbane just went absolutely nuts. And I remember just looking at realestate.com going, it might have gone up 20 grand in a month or something across the two of them. And I just thought, this is absolutely insane. Like the prices just kept growing. And within not long at all, Leichhardt had doubled. It was worth double what I paid for it. And it was still like the whole lot was positive geared. Like the properties were well and truly looking after themselves. And so like I had to look for the next opportunity. And I knew the sprawl would happen. So like, start looking at places outside, me being someone from Brisbane, do I look at Toowoomba? Do I look at Harvey Bay? Do I look heading south? In this time I changed careers and I was working in logistics, and logistics gave me a little bit of insight when I have all these clients asking for 3PL in Townsville. And I'm like, what's going on in Towns? Because I looked up and down the coast, but I didn't really know too much about it.
What's 3PL?
It's essentially in logistics, you don't warehouse your products. You have another business warehouse, pick, pack, receive and dispatch your products. It's really popular. So a lot of businesses look at a warehouse as a fixed cost. They got to pay bills every single, they got a lease, they've got all these things. Whereas with 3PL, you just pay for a pallet storage and then you pay for a pick and a pack and you just pay as you go. So a lot of businesses, like, I don't know, I don't want to say names, but they don't have, some don't even have staff. They might have an owner in Australia and they might offshore to the Philippines, all the admin and bits and pieces, and you can run a business purely by 3PL. But when I had inquiries popping up for this type of service in Townsville, it made me have a look at it a bit further. And then I was like, well, there's all these big transport depots there, that's their head office of essentially North Queensland was Townsville. You got Mackay 3 hours south, you got Cairns 3 hours north, you got the port there, you got the rail into Mount Isa. All of this sort of pointed to good signs. And then, you've got the big university, you've got the big hospital. Then I looked at the property prices and it didn't make sense. One thing that's been popping up in a lot of podcasts lately is reversion to mean, what houses should be worth. And like there's houses there, you could buy little cheap box, same sort of house like I bought in Leichhardt for 200 grand in suburbs like Vincent and Healy. And I just thought these are ones that are going to pay themselves off as well. But I don't want to buy them because I didn't know the area. I didn't know anything about Townsville and what it was like. And so it was scary because I didn't know anything. So luckily I'm part of a car group. I've got a pretty hotted up Focus RS, and I posted in a car group, anyone in Townsville want to have a chat to me about property, I'm looking at investing. And funny enough, a friend, let's call him Jay, said Christine and Chris are selling their property, get in touch with them. And I reached out to them and set up a little Teams meeting, and they had a property in Cranbrook that they lived in currently, but they were building a brand new home in Hermit Park, which is another nicer suburb closer to the river. It's a bit more fancy, essentially. So they were upgrading, and they had a build date. It's about 9 months away that they needed to, go until their house was completed. But they had this house that they lived in currently that they needed to sell to sort of move into the new place. And they said, we had a bank valuation done when we went through the finance process. Bank valuation was 300 grand. And I'm like, I looked at it and that's what, in my head, that's what I saw it as it was worth. Like I was like, that lines up with what I want. They save sellers fees. I save, the hunt. And like through the Teams meeting, they said when they bought the place, they redone the bathroom, painted everything, painted inside, painted outside, put up a new wood fence, did all these things. And I was really confident. It was perfect because someone could move in. It's not like the one I bought in Leichhardt that had an existing tenant where I knew I could just keep them there because they were happy. I knew that I'd have to bring this onto the market and, it be in a state that's really good to present and then sort of house someone.
Yeah.
And we just put our own contract with our own solicitors, so it couldn't get any more off market.
Off
It
market.
was it was yeah, never seen the light of day of anyone else but me. So
So tell me, 300,000, what was it? So it's in near Ipswich. It's a 3-bedroom
oh no,
house.
so this one's in Townsville. So the first one
Townsville,
was three
sorry.
bedroom. Yeah, so this was in Cranbrook, which is a sort of
Cranbrook.
middle ring suburb, 3 bedroom, 1 bathroom. It was a lifted home. So there was another, they couldn't call it a bedroom underneath, but it was another walled off room with its own aircon. And then obviously the laundry, and you could park your car underneath, etc. And it was on about 650 meters, just got a classic block. It was a perfect home. It was perfect.
Amazing. So that was your third property that you've bought since getting back on the horse. Did you buy anything else in 22?
Yeah, well, this is a long story. Actually, we offered that we put a contract in place in November to 21,
Yeah.
and then because they wanted to live in it for 6 months, the longest I could do for settlement was 6 months. So we had a 6 month settlement lead up. They basically then rented it off us for another 3 months until their property was done. So we just had something set up by ourselves, and then get an exit clean when you guys leave, and that was they're great people, so I trusted
Yeah.
them, if that makes sense. They own a car like me. but yeah, we ended up being friends. I've gone up and seen them a couple times now, and had lunch by the beach and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, that was, I'm pretty sure, rented for about 450. So
Yeah, okay.
so that process, when I was refinancing Oxley and Leichhardt, we pulled out enough money to buy something in around about the 450 range. And I had a few suburbs, Akenvale, Mundingburra, Hermit Park, as being like my target area where I wanted to go. So my 450 budget, I only spent 300 of it. I still wanted to buy more. So in that process, we actually bought another property before that other one sold.
Ah.
So we bought an apartment by the beach, a suburb called Northwood. If anyone's been to Townsville, the Strand, it's beautiful. When we visited, we fell in love with the Strand, Townsville in general. So we thought it would be good to buy some sort of little beach, getaway. And we bought a 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom unit by the beach apartment. So this one's first time buying something sort of smaller. It was going by all the rules. It's not part of a big complex. It's not any of those things. It's an older building, 4 units. There's 2 on the bottom, 2 above. We got the bottom unit with the courtyard that's on the beach side, and that was 175. And then when we did the conveyancing, it actually said in the ad it was 311. There was a car park, but the building come back is not actually that car park that was painted on the ground. It was just painted on the ground. It wasn't actually part of the title. You didn't own that painted ground. It was just painted there with a number 4 on it.
Yeah.
And so we actually had a $5,000 adjustment at settlement. So our 175 buy price was really only 170.
Okay, so 170, 2-bedroom apartment, only in a complex of 4. I'm guessing not very hectic strata fees.
No, it's not. And it was about 250, 300 meter walk from it.
Amazing. So yeah, how are you feeling now? You've got 4 properties. They're all pretty much covering themselves. You're still renting in another state. How's your property portfolio feeling, really only 4 years in after you started it?
To be honest, a lot of the times I know that everyone goes against, you got a capital growth property, or you've got a yield property, capital's what you want because it's what makes money. And then, all of those stories. I really saw it as being time in the market beats timing the market. So I really wanted to make sure I had a portfolio that looked after itself and didn't impact my life. My life was a life I loved. I was 2 incomes, no kids. We're going on overseas trips 3 times a year and doing all of these things. So I really wanted to make sure that my property portfolio was what I wanted it to be, looking after itself. I can hold it for a long time. It can look after itself. It's not a big impact on my life. So the properties that we bought, we were very lucky that, we come across this one in Cranbrook that, was an off market. And then this one popped up literally the same day we offered on it. The ad popped up, we offered on it straight away. This one will make you fall over, but we bought it for 175, but in 2010 it sold for 260.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we bought it 85,000 cheaper than the person before us. And it's funny because I bring these things up because I look at it. Like, I want to see what it sold for. I want to know the history. I want to know. And then when I was talking about that reversion to mean, the property, hasn't done anything. Why? And then obviously there was the big downturn because there was mining and there's this and there was that. But since then, the infrastructure that went into Townsville had grown. The people were there. They had to build other business. Properties grow. I mean, the population's growing. All these things. So I made sure that when little things like this popped up, and it's going to sound stupid, but I was on realestate.com every day. I had notifications set up for different areas. So then when a new property popped up, it would pop up on my phone. So I really selected the areas first before sort of making decisions.
Going in. Well, we might take a break there, and then I'm going to come back because I know that you've got another property in that portfolio, and I want to hear about how you got onto that property. But we'll take a break now. We'll be back very shortly.
If you're after personal financial advice, don't get it from a podcast. If you would like help based on your own personal situation, head over to moneypodcast.com.au, click Get Help, and we'd be happy to introduce you to one of our trusted professionals. Our panel of vetted financial advisors and mortgage brokers work with people all over Australia so they can connect with you wherever you are. That's moneypodcast.com.au and click Get Help.
All right, Ryan, you've got 4 properties so far. It's 2022. Tell me what the plan is now.
So we just got the one in Northward, and overall the portfolio is looking after itself. Little something happened. At the time I had 2 hotted up cars. One of them, my wife drove to the train station and get trained into work. It got broken into at the train station. And I thought, why have I got these 2 cars? I should just get something we called it the train station car. We sold and at that time, COVID prices for cars were going nuts. So a car that, before COVID probably sold for 25, I sold it for 30. And then I bought another car, bought it for $1,000 off a friend that was buying another car. And then cost me about $1,500 to fix it up. So $2,500 car just to go to the train station. I loved it. It was a little Kia Rio.
Yeah.
Best little, I can't say the word S-box, but
yes.
it was great because I didn't care about it. Having cars had always been pretty. And then, this little one I could just park at a train station when there's people parked over the line and I don't care. It's great. Anyway, I had more money. So I banked it. I sold this car. I had some more money in the bank and I was like, the boom's going to happen. Like, I know Townsville's got money in the bank to give me. And then on a Friday afternoon, an ad popped. It was from the same real estate company we bought the Northward property from. My wife looked at an email and said, oh, look at this property. It looks good. We should put an offer in. And to be honest, I was at the bottom of a 6-pack and I said, let's do it. Because I did the maths. It was on sale for, I can't remember, $189 or something like that.
And what sort of property was it?
It was a townhouse.
Yep.
So it was like a long row of houses. I think there's about 8 in the block. It was a nice Besser brick in Townsville. We've been to Townsville a couple of times since then. And Townsville, the houses are all built out of Besser blocks because it all has to be cyclone proof. So I knew structurally she's going to be good. You can see that it was refreshed a few years ago. Like I'm not going to say new kitchen, but a kitchen that was good. The walls, painting looked good. The carpet, probably not the best of choice. It was a stripy, rainbowy coloured carpet, but the carpet was new. I knew that I wouldn't have to replace that. It was $189 and it was a tenant already in it at $350 or something along those lines.
That's a great return.
That's the thing. And then we put an offer in. We put an offer in for $183 because my wife's born in 1983, but we ended up buying it for $185. So the purchase price in 2012 before was $180. So we bought it for $185. So I thought that's fine, $5,000. I know that that's not something you normally judge on. How much more you pay for than the last person. But when I did the maths, that sort of pushed us into like being money making now. So that property still now in my portfolio is still making money. So it was a sort of little add-on at the end of the year. So 22, we settled on 3 properties, all in Townsville.
So I've counted now, you've got 5 properties, one in 2018, one in 2020, and then the 3 in 22.
Yep.
Is there anything else that you've bought since then?
We did. We bought a property in 24.
And what was that?
So this one's special because we'd been to Townsville a few times. We'd loved it. We actually have a few friends up there now and we're like, we want to retire there. And we always sort of in the back of our head thought we'll move into Christine and Chris's place because it was nice. It had a space I could put a big garage in the backyard, hide cars in there. And we sort of already built in the back of our head when we go to retire, we'll move to Townsville, we'll Airbnb the one in North Ward, and because it's a great spot, Airbnb keep me occupied because I want to be working less and I can look after that. And essentially there's one little pocket called Palarenda. So when you look at it on Google Maps, it's sort of just up the end. It's north of North Ward. So it's along the sort of water that overlooks Magnetic Island. So when you're on the beach, you get to sort of look over the sort of calm, I'm not going to say bay because it's on the other side, you've got Magnetic Island. It's got its own stinger nets. It's beach-wise is a really nice beach too. So, and we had, as you do, alerts pop up, and one popped up and my wife said, let's buy this. It was a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1-car garage, about 200 metres walk from the beach, 2 streets back from the beach essentially. And it popped up, and I can't remember what they wanted for it, but I gave the agent a call and said, how many people are looking at it, got some information, and said, I'll put an offer in for $350. I'll send you an email so it's formal, but don't sell it, without giving me another chance. And went on for a little bit, and it's increased our offer to $360. Another party offer there, $560, not $360.
But I was thinking that would be a great buy.
It would be amazing. Sorry, yeah. It was $550, and then we offered $560, and then we sent an email saying, we'll go $570. It sunsets on Friday, to try and put that squeeze on. And then my wife, the cheeky bugger, basically sent an email saying we should just send an email, but with him still in it, saying, Cameron, if you're listening to this, I don't think you will be, but yes, my wife did do that, that on purpose to say, let's pull our offer and get that one on the Sunshine Coast. And half an hour later, he's called me back and said, I don't know if that email was meant for me, but it's worked. If you set that up, but it's worked, they'll take your offer. And I'm like, perfect. So,
but this is a special $570.
570.
But this is a special property. This isn't one that you bought with numbers. This is one that you're thinking that you might actually want to live in.
Oh, terribly geared. It was not on maths. It was purely by heart. It's the first place that I didn't do the maths. Like I looked at it and went, it's going to cost us money. But, on the other hand, we've got all these things. And, at the end of the day, we want to move and live in this. So if we have to pay for it every single week to keep it, that's what we got to do. The scariest part was that we had all these properties, and LVRs are great. I felt comfortable. They're getting lower. They're sort of below the 80%, or whatever it was, 60 or whatnot. But to buy this property, we had to refinance everything. So we refinanced all 5 properties back out to 80%. We put our 10% deposit on this property, and our bank balance, our LVR was, up over the 80%. We were highly leveraged. And so when you've got properties that are looking after yourself and you've highly leveraged, it doesn't really matter because you can make repayments. And on the flip side, when you're highly leveraged and you're coughing up, I think it was about $800 to $1,000 a week to sort of fill the shortfall, you kind of go, is this the right thing to do? What have I done? But at this point, the other properties in Townsville had already started going up a little bit. So they'd already started increasing. The one that I bought, the first one in Cranbrook, the first bank val I got a year later, it went up $2,000. It went from $300 to $302 in that first year. I can't remember what the others were. I've probably got them in the chart.
So were the rents going up as well? Because obviously, so let's go to 2024. You've got 6 properties. And I know that the last one that you bought was something that you had to contribute to. But overall, how much were you contributing out of your pocket a week into this portfolio to hold it?
Before the last one, not a lot. I don't think, if anything. I know that at this point, tax returns weren't a big sum. It wasn't really I was getting a big amount of money back at the end of the year. So that meant that it wasn't much coming out of my pocket because I had depreciation schedules in there and I had other bits and pieces that sort of added to my tax return. I was in a good spot. I thought I was set. I thought I was done. I thought, I got 5, that's plenty. I got good tenants. And I'll be honest, some years I didn't raise the rent. the little one that I bought in Hermit Park, I had this girl in there, and you'd see inspection photos, and she'd have all her Pikachu or all these different Pokemon plush toys sort of lined up on her bed. And I thought, she loves it. She props up the place. I won't do a rent rise, and little things. And there was the other lady that lived in the property in Leichhardt, same sort of story. I did very, very little. I might do $10 because I knew the property needed work. I knew, I bought it as something that was old, and we've only just now, it's still semi-finished, but we've only just now renovated it, and I guess that's another story. But I bought it knowing that it's making money. I don't need to keep increasing rent because she looks after the place. I'm not going to try and screw all the money I can out of these people. Don't get me wrong, when they leave and then I release a property, I'll bring it back up to market. So it might go up, $50 or whatever the shortfall is that I was doing. But while people were in there and they looked after the place, I didn't raise the rent, much. I did something, but yeah.
A lot of people think that you've got to choose between, I guess, that capital growth situation and the yield situation. Now, you've bought very conservative properties. You've bought very well within your budget. You've bought things that are, that are paying for themselves, if not very close to it. Let's fast forward to 25. Can you go through and tell me what all those properties are worth now?
Yeah. So the one in Oxley, this is just, I've got bank valuations. Bank valuation, I do it every year.
Just roughly,
at
yeah.
tax time. But yeah, the Oxley purchase price, $340, is now worth $679 June bank valuation, but RE.com says it's $738.
Yeah. What about Leichhardt?
So I bought that $205, bank valuation $598. So that's essentially tripled. I actually got another desktop bank val this week from Luke Venditti, great mate of mine, and he essentially said it was worth $647.
Shout out to Luke.
She's gone up 50 grand in 6 months. I wanted that bank val basically based because I just got it renovated. I painted inside, painted outside, new bathroom, new toilet, new everything, essentially new light fittings, new door fittings, all the stuff. I spent 50 grand on refreshing the property, and I had new photos as an ad on realestate.com, and I sent him and said, this is the ad, can I get a new desktop valuation? And he sent me back and he said, the photos hadn't updated on CoreLogic, so this is based on the previous photos, but without the improvements, it's gone up 50 grand. So
what about North Ward, the strata unit? What's that worth now that you bought for 170?
It's worth 280. Bank val January, and it's 340 on RE.com.
Yeah, wow. And is it Hermit Park?
Yeah. Yep. So Hermit Park, the little one that we bought just on a whim, 185, is now worth 310 bank valuation June, but 350 on RE.com now.
And your lifestyle property, the one you're going to retire in at 570, what's that worth now?
Bank val 700, but on RE.com it's 837, and it's probably maybe north of that because the property market in that suburb so tightly held. There's only a handful of streets. It's not somewhere like a big suburb where there's lots of houses and there's lots of transactions happening. People that buy in that area, they don't move. So there's maybe one will pop up a month if I'm lucky. There's big periods of time where there was nothing, but there's similar properties going for more. So it's one of those suburbs that I'm really glad I bought in because I know that
absolutely
capital growth in the future.
So you've come out of the market in 2015 with a $14,000 personal loan. You've gotten back in 2018 with very minimal deposit. You've used very minimal deposits to purchase other than equity growth. You've got a 6-property portfolio that I'm going to say conservatively is worth between 3 and 3.4 million. And you've borrowed about 1.7 to do that.
Yeah, I pulled a little bit more out for renovation. So
did you? What did you renovate? Which ones?
The one in Leichhardt. So that was the one I bought sight unseen, knowing it was old, and I had tenants in there, and essentially there was a mold issue. I had to exit them, and this was a great time. Pull out some more money. Let's refresh the place. So it's good because similar. I learned a lot, when it comes to the ways tax works, what improvements are versus what are repairs.
Yes.
All this water damage that's in the bathroom, it needs to be repaired. So essentially, come tax time, there's a lot of that 50 will be tax deductible also. So there's some capital improvements.
And you've done so much of that research yourself. Have you enjoyed doing the research to find those properties? You've obviously picked some amazing suburbs.
Yeah, like when I look at it, I look back and I think Townsville was just sort of one big property. Like if I put that same money into one great property, would I have the same return? I don't know. It's really hard to see because I know that what I've done, I wouldn't change. Like each one of those buying processes has been really, really fun. And at the end of the day, the properties that I have, I house 2 nurses, a landscaper and his family and his dogs. I provide houses for these people, and I like to think I'm a good, landlord. The other thing that I wanted to sort of mention is a lot of people ask me, go 6 properties. How's looking after 6 properties? They think it's going to be huge. And like, if I was to, from all of my learnings, if I was to pull out, one bit of advice is get a good property manager.
Yeah.
I've gone through a handful, and sort of a rule of thumb is if, they're part of a selling agent, they're not going to be any good. As bad as it sounds, if you're a business owner and you've got sales agents making big money and you've got this property management business on the side and you've got $100 to invest into, making the business better, it's going to be going towards making the money, the guys selling the houses. And unfortunately, the throughput of the staff inside the property management, I'd have a new property manager, I felt like all the time. But I moved to a really good property manager in Townsville, Tanya at New Horizons. All she does is property management. She's all over everything. That's her business. She runs it. She, even though I've got 4 properties, it feels like one because it's one person that I'm talking to, and we have a chat. We can talk about everything, get it all knocked over, and move on. And then same as I've got DC Group, Dominique and Courtney in Brisbane. They look after the 2 there. That's all they do is property management. They don't have. They're not sort of tacked on to a sales agent as well. They just do property management. I actually referred a friend onto them. He thanked me because, they've been really responsive and all of that. He wasn't happy with these sort of bigger chain ones. So the property managers has what's made it easy for me. And that's one thing that I think, when you're looking at how much money it costs you, like I got to go, okay, there's a relet fee and all these things, it adds up to money. But when I've got a few now, that's one thing that's made it easier. And I don't mind paying the money because I'll get 37 cents or 39 cents with Medicare back at the end of the year. So whatever they cost me, it's only really half price. So if I'm looking at going, they're going to cost me X amount of money, that money still contributes to my holiday money that I get paid in the middle of the year.
Well, for someone who's been through a few property managers, and it's a question that we get all the time, how do you pick a good one? What would be your top tip of finding a good one?
One, I guess, if they are, that's all they do. The question I typically would ask is, how long have you been doing it for? And then that'll tell me a lot, because if they've been in it for years or, if they haven't or whatnot, that's one thing. And then I'll ask, what's your networks of trades like? Like, who have you got? Because that's the other thing. They're always going to be sending me an email saying, I've got a tenant that's got a leaky tap, or I've got this, and then I'm like, what are their call out fees like, what, et cetera, et cetera. Just these little things that help, reduce the cost. So I'll be honest, I'll always, if I have last thing I did was replace an aircon. I just shoot it back an email, say, can you give me 2 quotes for Dakin aircons and then like a cheaper alternative? Boom, one will come back at 2,200, one will come back at 1,800, and I'll say go with the 1,800. Like little things that people think, I've got to replace an aircon. It's like 2 emails. So it's the people that have got the networks and can sort of do the bits and pieces, been on the game long enough to sort of know who's who in the zoo.
The other thing I want to ask you is, you've picked some really good suburbs. If you were going to give an investment piece of advice to someone just starting out in their portfolio, what advice would you give of what would you look out for in a suburb to invest?
Yeah, okay. There's a few different things. I don't know what it is. I think it's SQM Research. You've got the sort of heat maps of, you click on the wages and you sort of has a heat map and it shows you what areas are higher and these are lower. I did that across Townsville, but I guess on the bigger picture of things is that I look in what's going on in that area. So is it close to really good places of work? Is it really good close to a train line if it's applicable in that area, or is it close to places of work? Is there a good school or a hospital or something nearby that's going to be the draw card, if that makes sense? And it's not always reliable, but if you jump on Google Maps, if you're in the area, you can drive there. But if you jump on Google Maps and you have a look at the homes, you can kind of tell as well, if you're not in the area and that. But there's sort of the key things. When I did my homework in Townsville, I went on the website and said infrastructure projects in Townsville, and they were like reconcreting all the sidewalks at different areas. They were spending all this money. There's so much money being spent on all these different projects, and I just thought there's work, there's jobs, there's money being poured into these areas. So if you can find an area, one, where they're pouring plenty of money, and then two, where people's incomes are pretty good, that will then lead to gentrification and that whole process.
So tell me, Ryan, what's next for you? You're renting in Victoria. You've got this very impressive property portfolio in Queensland. I know you've got one earmarked that you'd like to live in eventually. What's your plan with all these properties? What's the end goal?
I will sell, like everyone else goes, no sell. I'll probably sell my Brisbane properties because they're the ones sort of getting the most capital growth, which will then retire the debt that I've accumulated. And then I'll move into the Pallarenda property. So one thing that we did, and I don't know how tax-wise this is, but one thing that we did is property has gone really, really well. And all of our properties have done really, really well. Refinanced 5 of our properties, a couple to 70%, a couple to 80%, and then we paid out the mortgage for Pallarenda. So Pallarenda now is owned outright. We don't no longer have a mortgage on that. So we'll continue to pay, the rent into the other accounts. But we know in the future, if something happens and we've got to sell, the final goal in 10 years or whatever it is ever down the track, when we want to move, we can move into somewhere that's mortgage free. And then whatever money we bank out of paying out all the debt, we can sort of have the goal is to keep them as a supplementary income, but we'll probably sell 1, maybe 2, the Brisbane properties that have made the most capital growth. And then depending on how active investor I want to be, my wife is, very active in a lot of things, and she might want to take on the property management and keep us occupied. I want to step back. I'm in a pretty full-on job now. I'm ready. My wife is also in a very, very full-on job, and we're sort of getting to a point where we'll get as much of this debt paid off as we can, and then when we're ready, take the step to move up and live on the beach.
Well, your properties are going to provide you with a lot of opportunity and choices as you do transition into retirement. Yeah, amazing. Look, you've done such an amazing job. I think the standout thing for me about your journey has been that you got burnt so badly at the start, and you had such a tough experience with property, and you came out of a property with only a debt, but you still got the mindset and the courage to go again. And I think that's really admirable. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all your journey with us. Is there any last tips that you'd like to give anybody listening? I know you've been a long-term listener, so I'd love to know if there's anything you'd like to share before we wrap up.
Not really. Just enjoy the journey, if anything. I enjoyed every single part of buying these places and the research and, being my own little nerdy sort of person around it all. But that's about it. Smash podcasts and do all the, looking into different areas and stuff. But yeah, enjoy the journey.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. You've been listening to This Is Property. My name's Rachelle Kroon, and we'll see you next week.
Any information given in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and you should seek your own property advice before acting on anything you may hear in this podcast. If you want to start or advance your property education journey, John Pidgeon's book, Sort Your Property Out and Build Your Future, is available where all good books are sold, or via the link in the podcast show notes. Opinions or comments from any guests on the podcast are theirs and not those of the host or the publisher or their respective license holders.